In the far edges of the galaxy, the Galactic Council had discovered something that no species had ever dared to explore properly. It was a planet officially marked as a Class-15 Deathworld, a title that meant it was one of the most dangerous and unpredictable places known to science. No one lived there, and no ship had ever landed without losing contact shortly after. The atmosphere was thick with toxic gases. The gravity was nearly twice that of most habitable worlds, and the storms that circled the surface were so violent they could tear apart entire fleets. The planet didn't want life. It rejected it. That was what the scientists said. And yet, to the Council, that made it the perfect test ground for a new kind of mission. The Council was made up of dozens of alien races, each proud of their history and technology. They had colonized hundreds of planets, built cities that floated above suns, and tamed worlds with mechanical precision. But this new discovery had humbled them. Every probe they sent burned out within hours. Every drone failed to send back data. Robots corroded, sensors malfunctioned, and even the toughest survival pods melted in the acidic rain. It was almost as if the planet itself was alive and angry. Many species considered abandoning the idea of exploring it altogether. But then, one race volunteered: humans. Humanity had recently joined the galactic community. To many aliens, they were considered strange, unpredictable, even primitive compared to the older species. Their home planet, Earth, was classified as a Class 10 Deathworld, meaning it was already considered quite harsh by galactic standards. It had predators, natural disasters, diseases, and weather that could kill within hours if one wasn't prepared. Yet humans had not only survived but thrived there. They had built civilizations in deserts, jungles, frozen tundras, and deep oceans. To them, danger was not something to avoid, it was something to overcome. That was why, when the Council asked for volunteers for the Deathworld mission, humanity raised its hand almost instantly. The mission was led by Commander Riley Stone, a woman known across human colonies for surviving impossible situations. She was calm, fearless, and had the kind of confidence that came only from facing death more than once. Along with her were a small team of 12, scientists, engineers, soldiers, and explorers, each trained in survival and equipped with experimental gear. They called their ship Odyssey, and their goal was simple: land on the planet, survive for 30 days, and gather data for the Galactic Council. To the humans, it sounded like an adventure. To everyone else, it sounded like suicide. On the day of departure, hundreds of alien observers gathered to witness the launch. Some watched with fascination, others with pity. "They won't last an hour," one alien murmured. Another whispered, "Humans are brave, but this is madness." Even the Council's own analysts predicted a 0.4% chance of survival. But Commander Riley didn't flinch. Before stepping into the ship, she said to the cameras, "We're not going to die. We're going to learn." It became a quote that would be remembered for generations. As the Odyssey entered orbit around the Deathworld, sensors screamed warnings. Lightning storms stretched across entire continents. The magnetic field distorted communications, and the surface temperature fluctuated by hundreds of degrees within minutes. It was a chaotic living hell. The crew buckled in as turbulence hit them like a hammer. The ship rattled, alarms blared, and for a moment it seemed as if the mission would end before it even began. But the pilot, Lieutenant Harper, gritted his teeth and forced the ship down through the burning clouds. "Hold together, baby," he whispered to the controls as if the ship could hear him. They broke through the clouds and saw the surface for the first time. It was a nightmare and a wonder at the same time. Black mountains glowed with volcanic fire. Rivers of liquid metal carved paths through jagged terrain, and the sky was filled with lightning that danced like living creatures. The ship's shields flickered under the electrical pressure. "Landing zone ahead," Harper shouted, and with a violent crash, the Odyssey slammed into the ground, skidding across burning soil until it came to a stop. The crew was thrown from their seats, but miraculously, no one was dead. When the doors opened, the world hit them like a wall. The air was heavy, metallic, and hot enough to make skin sting even through their suits. The ground trembled constantly as if the planet itself was breathing. Commander Riley stepped out first, planting a human flag beside the ship. The wind nearly tore it away, but she smiled beneath her visor. "We made it," she said. Behind her, the others began unpacking equipment, setting up sensors and building a temporary shelter. It was hard work. Every tool seemed to malfunction under the planet's intense conditions, and even their reinforced boots began to melt slightly. Within the first hour, 2 drones short-circuited, one of their oxygen filters failed, and communication with the orbiting satellite was lost. The aliens watching from above assumed they were already dead, but the humans weren't like other species. They didn't panic when things went wrong, they adapted. When their oxygen filters broke, the engineers cut parts from the ship's ventilation system and rebuilt them by hand. When their drones failed, the scientists used their own cameras and manual readings to collect data. When the shelters started to melt, they dug trenches and used pieces of the ship's hull as barriers. Every challenge only made them more determined. Commander Riley's orders were simple: adapt or die. We do not quit. Her calm voice kept everyone focused even when exhaustion and fear began to creep in. That night, as darkness fell, the temperature dropped to below freezing. The crew huddled together in the damaged shelter, listening to the howling winds outside. Ice began to form on the walls and the metal creaked under pressure. "This place really wants us gone," muttered one of the scientists, trying to laugh. Commander Riley just stared into the storm and replied softly, "Then we'll make it change its mind." No one slept much that night, but by morning the humans were still alive. They ate protein packs, checked their equipment, and went back to work. Day after day, they fought the planet itself. The storms, the heat, the radiation, everything tried to kill them. But with every passing hour, they learned more. They noticed how the storms followed certain patterns, how the toxic air changed with the weather, and how some plants seemed to survive in small, sheltered valleys. It was brutal, but it was also fascinating. The more they studied the world, the more it started to make sense. What had seemed like chaos was actually a kind of balance, a natural system unlike anything they had seen before. Meanwhile, in orbit, the alien observers couldn't believe what they were seeing. The human signal, though weak, still transmitted data. They were alive. Against all predictions, they were adapting faster than any other species had ever done on a Deathworld. The council members watched in stunned silence as human readings came in, showing stable vital signs, new shelter designs, and even energy readings from the planet itself. "Impossible," one alien scientist said. "They should be dead 10 times over." But they weren't. They were thriving in a place where even machines couldn't survive. On the planet's surface, the humans began building something new. Using melted metal, recycled ship parts, and materials from the environment, they constructed a small but strong outpost. It wasn't beautiful, but it worked. They named it Camp Dawn. It became a symbol of what humanity stood for: stubbornness, creativity, and hope. Every sunset was a victory, every sunrise a new challenge. Even though the storm still raged and the ground still shook, they felt a growing sense of belonging. Somehow this deadly world felt familiar, almost like home. By the end of the first week, Commander Riley recorded her message to the Galactic Council. Her voice was steady but filled with pride. "To anyone listening out there," she said, "this world is not a death sentence. It's a test, and humanity doesn't fail tests." The message, though distorted, reached the orbiting ships. Across the galaxy, millions listened in awe. No one could explain how humans were still alive, but deep down, everyone knew one thing had changed forever. The universe had just witnessed the beginning of something new, something unstoppable. And on the surface of the deadliest planet ever discovered, 13 humans stood beneath a storm-filled sky, refusing to die, refusing to surrender, and proving once again why they were unlike any species in the stars. The first sunrise on the Deathworld looked nothing like the ones on Earth. The sky burned in shades of red and black, and thick clouds moved like living creatures, rolling and twisting as if they had minds of their own. The air shimmered with heat, then froze the next moment. The ground cracked open, releasing bursts of toxic gas that hissed like serpents. It was a world built to kill anything foolish enough to stand on it. Yet somehow the humans stood there alive. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, their bodies covered in protective suits patched together from whatever material still worked. Around them, their Camp Dawn was half destroyed by the night storm, but no one complained. They just started repairing it in silence. Commander Riley Stone was the first to step outside the shelter that morning. Her boots sank slightly into the strange soil. It wasn't dirt, but a mixture of ash and metallic dust that crunched under pressure. She raised her arm to check her wrist monitor. Radiation was high, temperature unstable, oxygen dangerously low. Same as yesterday, she muttered. Behind her, the rest of the crew began to emerge one by one, yawning, stretching, coughing from the stale air inside their masks. They looked tired, but their eyes were sharp. They were survivors now, not explorers. The first problem they faced that day was the air. Their oxygen supply was running low faster than planned. The filters they had built from ship scraps were working, but not perfectly. Every few hours they had to stop and clean them by hand. Harper, the pilot, sat on a broken crate, using a small tool to pry out black sludge from one of the filters. "Feels like this planet is trying to choke us," he said, shaking his head. "It is," Riley answered quietly, checking another filter. "But we're not giving it the satisfaction." As the hours passed, the temperature rose sharply. The sun here wasn't gentle. It was a giant ball of angry light that burned through the atmosphere with terrifying intensity. The air shimmered and metal began to heat up enough to fry skin. The crew retreated inside the shelter, but even there, the heat seeped in. The engineers tried to activate the ship's cooling system, but it had already melted beyond repair. That was when one of the scientists, Dr. Leon, got an idea. "What if we bury parts of the shelter?" she suggested. "Underground, the temperature might stay stable." It was risky, but it was worth a try. Within hours, the crew was digging trenches with makeshift tools, using chunks of ship metal as shovels. Sweat dripped down their faces, their muscles screamed from exhaustion, but they didn't stop. They had done harder things on Earth. By evening, half the shelter was buried, and the temperature inside dropped just enough to make it bearable. They had won another small battle. Night came quickly. The sun vanished, and cold slammed into them like a wall. Within minutes, frost formed over the metal surfaces, and the wind began to howl. The world around them changed from burning fire to frozen death in less than an hour. The crew huddled together near a portable heater, their breaths forming clouds in the air. Outside, lightning streaked across the horizon, purple and white striking the mountains in the distance. The sound was so loud it made the ground vibrate. "Beautiful, isn't it?" whispered Dr. Leon, staring out the small window. "If you forget it's trying to kill us." Harper laughed softly. "That's humanity for you. We find beauty even in hell." The next morning, something new happened. Their food supplies, though rationed carefully, had begun to spoil. The temperature changes and radiation were ruining the sealed packs. That's when they realized they couldn't rely on what they brought. They had to find food on the planet itself. The problem was everything outside looked deadly. Plants dripped acidic sap, insects had metallic shells, and the few animal-like creatures they saw moved too fast to study. Still, Riley knew they had no choice. "We observe, we test, we adapt," she told her team. Just like Earth, Dr. Leon and 2 soldiers went out first. They collected samples of plants growing near a rocky cliff. The plants glowed faintly, pulsing with internal light, almost as if they were alive in ways humans didn't understand. Back at camp, they began to test the samples carefully. The first few melted through their containers. One even released a gas that caused dizziness. But one type of plant, small and gray, didn't react at all. They analyzed it deeper and found something incredible. It was high in protein and resistant to toxins. After treating it with heat, they tasted it carefully. "It's bitter," Leon said, grimacing, "but edible." That moment was more than just scientific success. It was hope. By the end of the week, the humans had learned more about the planet than any alien race ever had. They found a rhythm in the chaos, how the storms came and went when the air was breathable for short moments and where they could find resources. They started calling the planet Inferna, a nickname that fit both its danger and beauty. The alien observers orbiting above couldn't believe what they were seeing. The humans' vitals were stable. Their camp had grown. They were sending data, reports, and even pictures of the surface. It was beyond comprehension. "They should be dead," one alien scientist said again. "No one can adapt that fast." But the humans had a secret weapon that no technology could match: their will to live. On day 10, disaster struck. A storm unlike any they had seen before rolled in from the horizon. The sky darkened, winds screamed, and lightning fell like rain. The air was electric, glowing blue and white. The sensors went mad. "It's off the charts," shouted one of the engineers. "We have to shut everything down." Riley barked orders. "Seal the camp. Secure the ship." They barely had time to react before the storm hit. The walls shook violently. The roof nearly tore away and their equipment started sparking. A lightning bolt struck the ship directly, throwing Harper across the floor. For hours they sat in darkness listening to the storm tear apart everything they had built. Fear crept in for the first time. Maybe this was it. Maybe the planet had finally decided to end it. When morning came, the storm had passed. The camp was a mess. Half buried in debris, the ship badly damaged, supplies scattered. But the humans were alive. Bruised, bleeding, exhausted, but alive. Riley stood outside, staring at the ruined landscape. "We survived again," she said quietly. Her voice was filled with something between pride and disbelief. The others gathered around her, smiling despite the pain. Every storm that tried to kill them only made them stronger. That night, as they rebuilt their camp again, the stars appeared for the first time since landing. The clouds parted just enough to reveal a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. Harper leaned back against a piece of metal and sighed. "You ever think about what the aliens are saying up there?" he asked. "Probably wondering how we're still breathing," replied Riley with a grin. "Let them wonder. It's what we do best." In the following days, their adaptation became almost instinctive. They used storm energy to power their equipment, collected condensed water from the air, and even learned to predict temperature shifts. The planet was no longer just an enemy. It had become a teacher. Every challenge revealed something new, and every danger taught them how to survive better. They started recording their discoveries not just for the Council, but for themselves. It was no longer just a mission. It was a relationship between humanity and a world that tested them beyond limits. When they sent their next transmission to the Council, it was short and simple. Riley's voice came through static and interference, but her words were clear. "We're alive. The world isn't killing us, it's teaching us. Maybe it's not a death world. Maybe it's just waiting for someone stubborn enough to understand it." That message echoed through the galaxy. To the aliens watching, it sounded like madness. To the humans, it sounded like truth. As night fell again on the burning and frozen world, the crew of Camp Dawn sat together under the strange red glow of the sky. They shared the bitter-tasting alien food, laughed about their near-death experiences, and watched lightning crawl across the clouds. It was terrifying but also beautiful, and in that moment they all felt the same thing. They were part of something bigger now. This planet wasn't just another mission. It was a reflection of what it meant to be human, to face fear, to adapt, to survive, and to never stop trying. The world still wanted them dead, but the humans were no longer afraid. They were learning to live on its terms, and in that silent, deadly wilderness for the first time since their arrival, the Deathworld felt just a little less like death, and a little more like home. Weeks had passed since the humans had landed on the Class-15 Deathworld, and against all logic they were still alive. The Galactic Council, watching from their orbiting ships, couldn't believe it. Every report, every data stream that came through from Camp Dawn went against centuries of understanding. Species far older and stronger than humans had failed to survive even a single day here. Yet these fragile-looking creatures from a small blue planet had not only survived, they were starting to thrive. No one could explain it, but on the surface the answer was simple. Humans refused to die. At Camp Dawn, life had become a rhythm. The days were brutally hot, the nights painfully cold, but the team had learned how to work with the planet, not against it. Commander Riley Stone walked through the camp each morning, inspecting their makeshift structures. Their base looked like a patchwork of human ingenuity, part ship, part scavenged metal, part natural rock. The walls were uneven, the equipment old and worn, but everything worked. It was proof that when humans couldn't find perfection, they made progress instead. Their power systems had been nearly destroyed by the storms, but Harper, the pilot, and Dr. Leon had turned that disaster into opportunity. One night, during a lightning storm, they noticed that the electrical energy didn't just strike randomly, it moved in a pattern. It followed magnetic lines on the planet's surface. "If we can predict where it strikes," Harper said with excitement, "we can use it." The idea sounded crazy, but Riley approved it immediately. They had nothing left to lose. Over the next week, the team built crude lightning harvesters, tall metallic spires made from ship wreckage, anchored deep into the rocky ground. When the next storm came, they stood watching from the safety of their shelter as blinding bolts struck the rods. The entire base lit up for seconds at a time. The air crackled with raw power. The ground shook, and for a terrifying moment, it seemed the rods would explode, but they held. When the storm ended, their batteries were full. They had just powered their camp with the very force that was supposed to kill them. The discovery changed everything. They could now run their systems, heat their shelters, and power tools again. "We just made the planet work for us," Harper said proudly. Riley smiled. "No," she replied. "We learned how to listen to it." With energy restored, the scientists began to study the world in greater detail. The planet was strange, alive in ways they couldn't fully understand. Its storms followed natural cycles, its soil shifted with heat, and even the air seemed to react to living presence. The plants they had found earlier were growing near the camp, some even adapting to the humans' presence. They had changed color slightly, as if evolving faster in response to human activity. "It's like the planet is watching us, Doctor," Leanne whispered one night, "and it's learning too." Meanwhile, the alien observers grew more obsessed with the data. The Galactic Council had thought of humans as reckless explorers, too emotional and unrefined. But now, species that had once mocked them were studying their methods. "They are turning chaos into order," one alien scientist said. "They do not conquer, they adapt." It became a new kind of fear, mixed with fascination. As days turned into weeks, Camp Dawn expanded. The crew had cleared areas for research and built greenhouses from transparent fragments of the ship's viewport glass. They grew small crops using the gray protein-rich plants they had discovered. For the first time, fresh air flowed through the camp, filtered and alive. The once dead world was giving them life. But the breakthrough that truly stunned the galaxy came when they decoded the planet's energy pattern. Dr. Leon realized that the storm's frequency could be predicted almost like weather patterns. "It's not random," she said, pointing at the holographic map. "It's breathing. The planet has rhythm, just like Earth's oceans and winds." Using this knowledge, they built safer systems, timed their work, and even ventured farther from camp to map the land. The planet, once seen as death itself, was beginning to reveal its secrets. During one expedition, 2 of the soldiers discovered something extraordinary in a vast canyon filled with glowing crystals. The crystals pulsed faintly, giving off both light and heat. They collected samples and brought them back. When tested, the crystals produced clean, stable energy for hours without decay. The humans stared in amazement. "This could power cities," Harper said. Riley nodded slowly. "If we survive long enough to tell anyone about it." That night they set up a small generator using the crystal as its core. The light it produced was soft and steady, unlike the harsh flicker of electricity. The camp was bathed in a warm blue glow, and for the first time since arriving, they felt peace. Riley looked around at her crew, dirty, tired, but smiling. "We came here to survive," she said, "but maybe we're here to learn." The message they sent to the Galactic Council that week sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Riley's recorded voice played through every communication network. "This world is not a death trap. It's alive, and it's teaching us how to live with it. The storms that destroy also give energy. The plants that poison can feed. The danger is just another kind of balance. Maybe the universe isn't trying to kill us. Maybe it's testing who deserves to stand in it." The aliens who received the transmission were speechless. No other species had ever spoken about a death world that way. For most of them, danger was something to be avoided, contained, or destroyed. But humans seemed to embrace it, even respect it. Some races began quietly studying Earth's history, curious how such a species had evolved. They discovered Earth's violent storms, shifting climates, predators, and diseases. It became clear, humanity had never lived in comfort. They were the children of struggle. Back on the death world, the humans had stopped counting the days. Their bodies had adapted to the planet's harsh conditions in small but noticeable ways. They slept less, their reflexes were sharper, and their tolerance for the toxic air had increased. It was as if evolution was already working with them. One morning, Harper joked, "Give it a few generations and we'll start growing armor plates like the bugs out there." Riley laughed but didn't dismiss the idea. "Maybe," she said, "but for now we'll just keep doing what we do best. Survive." The more they explored, the more they realized how much the planet offered. Underground caves provided shelter from radiation. Water sources, though acidic, could be purified with simple filters. They began mapping the terrain carefully, marking zones of relative safety and danger. The Deathworld was starting to become something familiar, not safe but understandable. And for humans, understanding was the first step to control. One night, while repairing equipment outside, Riley stood looking at the horizon. The storms danced far away, glowing like lightning oceans. She remembered Earth, its sunsets, its cities, its beauty mixed with chaos, and she smiled to herself. "This place isn't so different," she whispered. "Just another version of home." When the Galactic Council finally sent rescue ships, months had passed. The humans were supposed to have perished long ago, but when the ships entered orbit, what they saw shocked them. Instead of wreckage, there was a glowing human outpost. Energy signatures pulsed from the lightning harvesters, and the terrain near the camp had transformed where it was stable, greenish in patches, alive. The Deathworld was changing. The rescue team made contact, urging Commander Riley to prepare for evacuation, but her reply stunned them all. "We're not leaving," she said firmly. "We've built something here. We've learned more in weeks than your scientists have in centuries. This world isn't a curse, it's a gift, and we're not done yet." The Council didn't know how to respond. It was unheard of. No one stayed on a Deathworld by choice. But the humans were different. They had turned survival into creation. They had turned fear into progress. From orbit, the observers watched as the humans continued to work, moving like tiny figures across the violent land, building structures that glowed in the stormlight. It was a sight that sent chills through every civilization in the galaxy. For the first time, they understood something profound. The universe didn't scare humans. It inspired them. On the surface, as another storm began to roll in, Riley stood on a high ridge, watching the lightning rods glow in the distance. The wind roared, dust swirled, and thunder cracked open the sky. But she didn't hide. She spread her arms slightly, feeling the power of the world around her. Behind her, the camp lights burned steady against the storm. They had come to survive 30 days, and instead, they had built a new beginning. The Deathworld hadn't destroyed them. It had revealed who they truly were. And as the storm's first bolt struck their harvesters, filling the camp with light once more, Riley whispered to herself, "Let it come. We're ready." Far above, in the silence of space, alien eyes watched in awe. The humans had done the impossible again. They hadn't just conquered a Deathworld, and they had befriended it. And the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The news of what the humans had done on the Class-15 Deathworld spread faster than anyone could control. Across the galaxy, on space stations, alien cities, and colony worlds, the story became the only thing anyone talked about. Entire governments called emergency meetings to confirm if the reports were real. Some said it was impossible. Others said it was a lie or some kind of human propaganda. But the data streams from the human base were real, unfiltered and undeniable. The humans had not only survived on the deadliest planet ever found, they had turned it into a working colony. The impossible had become reality. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from more than 100 different species gathered in silence. The chamber was vast, filled with strange shapes and colors, each seat representing a civilization that had once thought itself powerful and wise. Now they sat in uneasy quiet, watching holographic recordings sent from the human base, Camp Dawn. The images showed humans walking on the surface of the Deathworld, storms raging around them while lightning harvesters glowed like beacons. It showed thriving plants, glowing crystals, and shelters built from wreckage and native materials. It showed survival where survival should have been impossible. An insectoid ambassador broke the silence first. "This is a trick," he hissed. "No organic species can endure conditions like that." But another voice, calm and measured, replied, "And yet they do. The data is authentic." That voice belonged to Drastel, a scholar from the Olani, one of the most advanced races in the council. He leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the hologram. The humans have accomplished something we could not in 10,000 years. They have made peace with chaos. The debate went on for hours. Some called for further observation. Others demanded the humans be removed immediately, claiming their presence violated council safety laws. But there were also those who admired them, who saw in humans something ancient, something the galaxy had forgotten. The argument reached its peak when a representative from a water-based species slammed a tentacle on the table. "They are dangerous," he said. "If they can survive there, they can survive anywhere. Do you not see what that means?" Meanwhile, on hundreds of worlds, ordinary citizens watched the human footage with fascination. On news screens and public displays, the humans' faces appeared, tired, dirty, and smiling beneath alien skies. To some, they were heroes. To others, they were monsters in disguise. Rumors spread that humans were immune to fear, that their bodies could adapt to any world, and that they carried ancient genes from a predator species. Children of other races played games pretending to be humans, while soldiers and scientists studied their every move. The word Deathworlder began to take on a new meaning, no longer an insult, but a title of respect. Back on the Deathworld itself, the crew of Camp Dawn had no idea how much chaos they had caused across the galaxy. They were too busy living, building, and exploring. They had lost count of the days. For them, life on the Deathworld had become normal. The once deadly storms were now predictable. The toxic air no longer frightened them. They had grown used to the rhythm of the planet, as if it had become part of their own heartbeat. Commander Riley Stone often stood outside their shelter at night, watching the lightning dance across the horizon. To her, it felt like the planet was alive, not as an enemy anymore, but as an old friend testing their strength. One morning, the communications system crackled to life with a council transmission. It was the first contact in months. The voice that came through sounded cautious. "Commander Stone, this is the Galactic Council. We request a full report on your situation. Your survival has disturbed many." Riley smiled slightly at that last part. "Disturbed many," she repeated to herself. Then she activated the recorder. "Report begins," she said, her voice calm and strong. "We are alive and stable. The planet is no longer hostile, only misunderstood. Everything here tries to kill you, yes, but that's only because it's alive and balanced. Once we learned its patterns, we adapted. Humanity was born on a death world too. Ours just had blue skies." When that message reached the council, it caused an uproar. The phrase "humanity was born on a death world" became famous overnight. It shocked the galaxy. Most species came from safe, stable worlds with gentle climates and peaceful ecosystems. Earth, however, was a planet filled with predators, diseases, natural disasters, and extreme weather. To the other races, it was unthinkable that intelligent life could evolve under such conditions. But the humans had, and now it all made sense: their courage, their stubbornness, their endless curiosity. They weren't reckless by accident. They were built by survival. Scientists across the galaxy began studying human biology and history again, this time with new respect. They saw how humans had lived with constant danger: hurricanes, volcanoes, freezing winters, burning deserts. They saw how humans had learned to fight not just nature, but each other, and still built civilizations. They saw art created during war, laughter during famine, and hope in darkness. Slowly, the galaxy began to understand. Humans didn't just survive danger. They grew stronger because of it. Back on Camp Dawn, the humans continued to explore. They had started naming parts of the planet now: the shattered plains, the iron forest, the storm belt. Each name carried a story of something they had endured. One day, during an exploration mission, Dr. Leon discovered signs of old alien wreckage buried under layers of ash. They realized another species had tried to settle the planet long ago but failed. The structures were melted, the bones fossilized in strange positions. Riley stared at them for a long moment. "They were stronger than us," she said quietly. "Smarter, too. But they didn't last." Harper placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe that's the difference," he said. "We don't try to control the world. We just learn how to live with it." As weeks turned into months, the council sent a delegation ship to the Deathworld. When they landed near Camp Dawn, the alien representatives expected to find a desperate, broken team barely clinging to life. Instead, they found a thriving outpost glowing in the stormlight, powered by captured lightning and stabilized by human-built shields. The air around the camp was clearer than the rest of the planet. The soil nearby even showed signs of new plant growth. It was as if the humans' presence had started healing the world. The alien visitors were escorted through the camp. Everywhere they looked, humans were working, repairing equipment, studying local plants, and laughing as they shared stories over bitter alien food. The representatives were speechless. Finally, one of them, a tall being with shimmering scales, asked, "Why do you stay here? You've proven your point. You could return home as heroes." Riley turned to him with a small smile. "Because this isn't just survival anymore. It's discovery. We came to study this world, but it's studying us too. Every storm, every danger, it changes us, makes us better. Maybe that's what we're meant to do. To take impossible things and make them possible." Her words were recorded and transmitted back to the council. They became another line written into history books across the stars. Young alien cadets began to repeat it during their own training, inspired by the strange humans who refused to give up. Some species even started sending small teams to harsh planets, hoping to learn what the humans knew about adaptation. A quiet revolution had begun, an idea that strength didn't come from comfort but from challenge. But not everyone celebrated humanity's success. Some feared it. In private meetings, powerful empires whispered about the Deathworlders. If humans could survive on the deadliest planet, what would stop them from surviving everywhere? What would happen if they decided to expand further? Their unpredictability made them both admired and feared. One general from a distant star empire said grimly, "You cannot defeat those who have already made peace with death." Yet, in the middle of all this fear and fascination, the humans on Camp Dawn continued to live their lives. They built stronger homes, grew more food, and studied the energy crystals that powered their camp. They were no longer outsiders, they were pioneers of something new. Every night, Riley wrote in her mission log. Her last entry of that month was simple but powerful. "The galaxy thought we were fragile. They were wrong. We are the children of struggle, and we belong anywhere life dares to exist." The Galactic Council eventually recognized Camp Dawn as an independent research colony, the first of its kind on a Class-15 world. Humans were given a new reputation, not as reckless explorers but as the galaxy's survival experts. Other species began requesting human advisors for dangerous missions. The same beings who once laughed at them now sought their wisdom. And so, the Deathworld that had once symbolized fear became a symbol of hope. It reminded every species that the universe was not something to hide from, it was something to face. Humanity's actions had changed not only science but philosophy itself. For the first time, civilizations that had lived in comfort began to question their limits. From her post overlooking the endless storms, Riley watched the alien delegation ship leave orbit. The sky rumbled softly above her, as if the planet itself was listening. "You see," she murmured, "they finally understand. It's not about strength. It's about never giving up." The wind howled in reply and she smiled. In that moment, she knew the truth. The Deathworld had not just changed humanity, it had changed the entire galaxy. Years passed after the first humans set foot on the Class-15 Deathworld, and what began as a desperate survival mission turned into one of the greatest turning points in galactic history. The world once known as uninhabitable now stood as a symbol of courage and change. The humans called it Ares Prime, a name that represented both struggle and victory. The storm still roared, the ground still trembled, but life, against all odds, had found a way to stay. And that life was human. The colony had grown beyond anyone's imagination. Where once there were only 10 humans fighting for survival, now stood a small city. The buildings were strong, made from a mix of local minerals and human technology. Towers of reinforced glass and metal reflected lightning strikes in the distance. Crops grew inside large domes powered by energy, harvested from the planet's storms. Children laughed as they played under the protection of the colony's shields, their eyes full of wonder, their lungs breathing air once thought poisonous. Humanity had done the impossible. They had turned the Deathworld into a home. Commander Riley Stone, now older and more experienced, stood on the edge of the observation deck. Her hair had turned silver, but her eyes still burned with the same determination. She watched the horizon where the storms met the mountains. To her, it was still beautiful, still wild, still dangerous. Behind her, A new generation of explorers was preparing for another mission deeper into the unknown parts of the planet. Humanity had not stopped exploring. They had only begun. Dr. Leon walked up beside her, holding a datapad filled with research results. "You know," he said quietly, "this planet shouldn't even support life as we know it. But somehow the soil near the colony is stabilizing. The air is getting cleaner. Even the storm frequency is decreasing." Riley smiled slightly. "Maybe the planet is learning to live with us," she said. "Or maybe we're finally learning to live with it." What neither of them fully understood yet was that Ares Prime wasn't just changing physically. It was changing how the entire galaxy thought. After the human success, hundreds of species began re-evaluating what they believed about life, danger, and progress. The term Deathworlder had become something new entirely. It was now a title of respect and honor. Alien academies began to study human resilience as a science. There were now courses titled The Human Mind, Adaptation Through Adversity, and Lessons from Earth's Children. Some of the older species, who had always considered themselves superior, began to realize that their civilizations had grown weak through comfort. They lived on safe planets surrounded by peace and technology, but they had forgotten how to struggle, how to push themselves. The humans reminded them what it meant to fight, to survive, to evolve. Soon, delegations from other worlds started visiting Ares Prime. They came not just to observe, but to learn. Engineers studied the colony's energy systems. Biologists examined how human immune systems had adapted, and leaders came simply to speak with Riley and her team. Every visit ended the same way, with awe and humility. But change always comes with fear. In some corners of the galaxy, powerful empires saw humanity's success as a threat. "If they can tame a Class-15, one alien general said during a secret meeting, they can conquer any world. If they ever turn against us, no planet will stop them." Plans were quietly made to monitor human expansion, to restrict their exploration rights. But even the most fearful leaders knew something they couldn't deny. Humanity had changed the rules of survival. Meanwhile, on Ares Prime, life continued. The colony's children grew up listening to stories of Earth, a blue world with oceans and forests, and the story of how their parents had come to this place. For them, Ares Prime wasn't a death world. It was home. They climbed black rock cliffs and ran through stormlit fields with laughter instead of fear. The danger around them wasn't a curse anymore. It was a teacher. Every challenge the planet threw at them made them stronger. One night, a massive storm hit the colony, the largest anyone had ever seen. Lightning crashed across the sky and the wind howled like an angry beast. The colony's shields flickered and groaned under the pressure. Alarms blared, and everyone rushed to secure power lines and reinforce barriers. Riley, despite her age, was out there with them, pulling cables, shouting orders, refusing to rest. When the storm finally ended after hours of chaos, the colony stood battered but alive. The humans had survived again. As dawn broke over the wrecked landscape, the colonists stood together, watching the sunrise. The sky was clear for the first time in months. "We made it," whispered Harper's daughter, her voice trembling with pride. Riley placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "We always do." That moment became legendary. The footage of the sunrise over Ares Prime was shared across the galaxy, and billions watched in silence. The image of the humans standing there, small figures in a vast, dangerous world, became the most powerful symbol of resilience ever seen. It was not a story of conquest or power, but of coexistence and endurance. As the years passed, more colonies followed. Humans volunteered to explore other death worlds, Class 12, Class 13, even another Class 15. Everywhere they went, they adapted, endured, and thrived. The galaxy began to see them not as outsiders, but as the universe's pioneers, the ones who would go where no one else dared. Riley eventually retired from command, but her name became legend. Statues of her were built on Ares Prime and Earth alike. She spent her final years teaching new explorers, reminding them that strength wasn't about weapons or power, it was about will. "The galaxy doesn't need conquerors," she once said in her final address to the council. "It needs survivors who understand what life is worth fighting for." When she passed away, the entire colony mourned. The storms that night seemed quieter, almost as if the planet itself bowed in respect. Her burial site was marked by a single phrase engraved into stone: "She made the impossible possible." Generations later, humans continued to live and work on Ares Prime. The planet that had once been feared became a center for research, innovation, and training. Aliens from dozens of species studied there, walking the same paths where the first humans had fought to survive. The air was breathable without filters now. The storms had become part of the planet's natural rhythm, and life of all kinds had begun to spread again. But even with all these changes, the colony never forgot its past. Every year on the anniversary of the first landing, they gathered to tell the story of how it all began. The story of those who refused to give up when everyone else said it was impossible. Children listened wide-eyed as elders told tales of how humans faced a world that wanted them dead and turned it into a home. And far beyond Ares Prime, the impact continued to ripple. The Galactic Council eventually adopted new exploration policies inspired by the humans. Instead of avoiding dangerous worlds, they began sending mixed species teams to study them. The idea that life could exist only in safety was gone forever. The universe, once divided by fear, began to unite in curiosity. Some alien historians later said that the humans didn't just survive the Deathworld, they taught the galaxy to dream again. They showed that even in the darkest, most hopeless places, there was potential waiting to be found. In time, the name Deathworld faded from maps and records. Ares Prime became known as the World of Dawn. It stood as a reminder that from struggle came strength and from danger came discovery. Humanity had proven that the line between life and death was not fixed. It could be rewritten by courage. As the sun rose over the mountains of Ares Prime, generations later, a young explorer stood on the same spot where Riley once stood. The storm still flickered in the distance, but they were gentle now, almost protective. The young man looked out at the horizon and whispered the same words Riley had once said long ago. "It's not about strength. It's about never giving up." And in that moment, it was clear that the spirit of the first Deathworlders, the humans who changed everything, still lived on, not just in their descendants, but in every being across the galaxy, who dared to face the impossible and believe they could survive.